Welcome along to another international special of the Play On podcast. We are your weekly fix of all things Scottish football. We'll be with you tomorrow night as well, but tonight we are covering before, during and after analysis, opinions and general banter of the Israel versus Scotland game. We're playing away tonight. We're not at the Hampden Park, not that it did us much good the other night, but we're away from home tonight and we're going to be covering, like I say, pre-match, during and afterwards. I'm joined by Anthony Brown tonight. He's back after club duties during the week there on Thursday night. He couldn't make it. We've got Stephen Commons as always, and myself, David Simmons, with you tonight. We're just having a look quickly at some of the changes tonight. It looks like there's 3 out and 3 coming in, obviously. Christie, Armstrong and Dykes drop out, while Fraser, McGregor and Shea Adams make a start from Scotland. Stephen, start with you tonight, mate. What do you think those changes that Steve Clarke's made, what's his intention? Is he going out for goals tonight?
I think he probably is just looking to kind of have a bit more of a threat going forward. I think we obviously talked about the other night that Scotland were pretty good, they were pretty well organised up to a point, and they created quite a few chances, nothing massive or magnificent, but they were pretty decent. But I just think they lacked that final ball, that final pass, and maybe just somebody that creates something out of nowhere, apart from Joe McGinn's overhead kick, obviously. That's the exception. But I think it's quite difficult to kind of judge right away where these guys are going to fit in. I would imagine if he's going to play the same system, which I don't see any reason why he won't, that he's probably going to push McGinn on one and have McGregor sitting in there with McTominay in the middle of the park. McGinn always seems to have a threat and play much better for Scotland when he's actually in that sort of more advanced role. So I think he's probably going to go in there. Where Ryan Fraser comes in, I'm not 100% sure. I don't know if they're just going to utilise his pace and his direct running and kind of play him and Adams as kind of just running machines, get the ball and go at them. As we discussed the other night, I don't think Israel are any great shakes. Let's be honest, I don't think Scotland are either. But Israel are a team that Scotland can get at. They're not a giant of European football. And if I was Scotland, I'd be looking tonight to just kind of take the confidence that they gained from the previous campaign and from a pretty reasonable result on midweek, and push on.
Yeah, I mean, we'll discuss more about the Scotland team very shortly. If we look at the Israel team, Anthony, they're like our new best friends at international level. I think we've played them 5 times in the last 8 months or something like that. It's ridiculous. But I mean, they start with 2 familiar names that we know: Marciano in goals, the Hibs goalkeeper, and El Hamid at the back. We know how big a player David Marshall is for Scotland. How important is Marciano going to be in between the sticks tonight for Israel?
Yeah, he's a good goalkeeper. We've seen enough of him at Hibs over the past 5 years to know that he's a quality goalkeeper who's comfortable in the international environment. With Israel, he was established as an internationalist before he moved to Hibs. He had a period where he was dropped when he wasn't playing regularly at Hibs, I think maybe about 3 or 4 years ago. And then he's obviously in the last year or two he's regained the gloves. So he's clearly a dependable goalkeeper. He's certainly one of the best goalkeepers in the Scottish Premiership, and he's going to be he's international class. He's certainly, I would say, probably on a par with David Marshall. He's not the greatest goalkeeper I've ever seen in the world, but he's certainly a good goalkeeper who's going to give Israel a bit of assurance at the back. And I mean, you touch on the familiarity between the teams. I mean, there's obviously Marciano and El Hamid, was it? Did you say?
Yeah.
And the fact that this is the 4th time that they've played since September, I mean, that's incredible. Plus all the games in recent years before that as well between the two teams. It's just incredible how many times they've been pitted against each other. And I dare say the danger is that they both know each other so well that it'll become a cagey game, a tight game, very much like the previous games we've seen between them, when it was both games at Hampden were draws this season, and the one in Israel won narrowly after Scotland's exploits in Serbia, where I dare say they were still a bit hungover that night. But I mean, it's the sort of game that probably will go 1-0 either way, or end up 0-0 or something. I'm not expecting a thriller. I'm not expecting a wide open kamikaze entertaining fixture, I have to say, just because of that familiarity. The two managers both know everything about both teams, though, and I think it could be one of a pretty, not a grim watch, but I'm not expecting a massively open and entertaining fixture, I have to say.
So you're not expecting the goal volume for the fixture. In the earlier result, it was Denmark 8, Moldova 0, the other fixture in the group. We've got Austria, our opponents from Thursday night. They take on the Faroe Islands at a 7:45 kick-off as well, and obviously Israel, Scotland, which will be happening at the same time. Stephen, the comments are coming in. There's a few to do with Heart of Midlothian, which you maybe expected. We had some the other night, but we'll touch on that tomorrow night on the Play On podcast Monday night. I think that might well be our leading headline.
I'm definitely looking forward to it, mate. It's going to be amazing. I can't wait. It's going to be so good.
Hi very much to Stephen, who's been in touch. Hi guys, ready for a big 3 points tonight. He's quite confident, hopefully, that we'll get the 3 points. That would be nice. We're hoping that Marciano has an off night. Anthony, you've touched on him.
Just very quickly talking about Marciano, where do you see him play? Like, what level do you see him playing at next year? If he's going to, obviously, he's letting his contract run down at Hibs. Where do you see him? Where do you pitch him as a sort of goalkeeper? Will he be maybe a championship in England, or?
I think he'll go abroad. I know what you mean. It's very hard to see where he goes. I mean, he's getting into his 30s now. There's been times before where he's spoken about wanting to leave Hibs or hinted that he wants a bigger move. He's never really made any secret of the fact that he would like to move to a perceived bigger club. I guess just get a payday, before he retires.
Yeah.
But he is one of these guys that I just think, I remember it was a similar situation with Arno Zoom at Hearts, and you knew he was outgrowing Hearts, but you couldn't envisage where he would end up next, and he ended up going out to, I think, Saudi Arabia. So I wouldn't be surprised if you saw Marciano go somewhere similar, where there's a good bit of money, but it isn't necessarily the highest standard of football. But equally, he's got enough on his CV over the last few years to be of interest, I dare say, to English Championship clubs, if that's where he wants to go, if he does indeed want to go to England.
Yeah, I mean, one of the talking points from the other night as well is how do we accommodate both Andy Robertson and Kieran Tierney? I mean, an app that I use to have a look at, obviously, live scores, if you like. It's got a predicted 4-3-3 fixture tonight with Andy Robertson playing left back with Kieran Tierney just in front of him. Do you think that will be the case, Stephen?
Nah, I can't see that at all. I'd be very, very surprised. I thought Kieran Tierney was really good on what was it? Wednesday?
Thursday. Lose track of the days.
Yeah, losing track of days. But no, I thought he was really good. But I can kind of see why there's been a bit of debate and a bit of sort of argument about this during the week with certain pundits and fans and sort of. Andy Robertson hasn't had a fantastic game for Scotland for the last probably 6 or 7 games. You would argue that people's expectations for him are probably sky high. He's not a Gareth Bale, who is the perceived player who's miles ahead of everybody else, who's going to create moments of magic. Let's be honest. Andy Robertson's very technically a good player, but he's ultimately a defender. And I don't think he's made any glaring errors either. Like, I don't remember them being many massive mistakes that have cost Scotland dearly. So I think it would be really harsh to drop him. So obviously Steve Clarke does have to try and get a system that both of these guys can play in. And I didn't think it was a huge error for them to play the system that they played on Thursday night. I think that they both looked reasonable. I would say Andy Robertson was a comfortable 6 or a 7, nothing spectacular, and also nothing bad. And I thought Tierney was probably one of the best players on the park. I understand that role that he's got in that back three does it does put a bit of a leash on him at times, and he can't go marauding forward the way that he probably would like to. But it also presents opportunities, because when he does break out, he's not coming up against somebody directly at times, so he does have more space to manoeuvre into in different areas. I don't see there being a massive sort of formation change tonight for Scotland. I think the fact that they've played 3-4 days ago and were reasonably okay, pretty well organised, and it's a system that Steve Clarke has tried to push pretty hard for the last 5 or 6 matches. So I think they're going to set up a similar system to what they did on Thursday, to be honest.
Yeah, thanks to David Kelly for the message. If we're serious about the group, then we have to win tonight. Austria are a good team, as they've showed, and Denmark won't drop many points. I mean, yeah, it is. I agree with everything you just said there, David. Anthony, it is important that we pick up the 3 points tonight after only picking up a point on Thursday night, isn't it?
Definitely. I think Denmark are showing the way forward in this group. They've obviously come out the traps and won 2-0 in Israel on last week, and they've now followed that up with an emphatic victory against one of the minnows of the group. So they're obviously in the driving seat. Austria will probably see that as a good point they got at Hampden the other night, and Scotland have generally seen it as a good point as well because of Austria's quality. But if Scotland are serious about challenging Denmark and or Austria for winning the group, then they would probably have to win tonight. If not, then they're probably looking at a playoff place, just because it does. I mean, Denmark have obviously gone to Israel and won, so in theory Scotland will have to do the same if they're to. I know it doesn't always work like that. Denmark may slip up somewhere else, but certainly if you want to keep yourself up there in the early phase of the qualifying section, then you would want to go and try and eke out some sort of victory tonight.
Yeah, absolutely.
As we said on Thursday, Sammy, like Scotland for far too long and far too many campaigns have left themselves late in the group needing snookers almost. Like they're needing to go away to places that they've never been before and won. And you would think that if we don't pick up a decent enough result tonight, then that's the sort of situation you're going to be faced later in the group. You're going to probably be looking at the double header against Denmark thinking we need to take 6 points. And realistically, that's probably not going to happen if you've not been in a great run of form going into that. So it is about kind of setting a decent precedence. At the same time, though, I would sort of equal that by saying it's not a complete disaster if they get a draw tonight and come away, because I would say that although there's not a standout team in this group, there's not a giant of European football that stands out as they're the winners. I also think that all the other teams around are kind of not a similar, like not too far off each other level. Like Austria, Scotland, Israel, and probably Denmark. You chuck into that group as well. Like Denmark are not echelons above the rest of those teams. So I just think that those teams are capable of taking points off each other. So it might not be a complete and utter disaster to draw this tonight, but to lose it's a pretty poor start on paper after that.
Yeah, no, we certainly don't want a defeat tonight. Hi to Dave, thanks for the message. Big test, but we know what we are all about, and we have better players man for man. I mean, that's it. I mean, we do have a high calibre of player in that Scotland squad, but Anthony, it's getting them all to bind together and put that performance on the park, and obviously hit the back of the net as well, mate. I mean, we touched on it on Thursday night, your absence, so just to bring up to speed, obviously, Andy Robertson, the player he is, such a good player in that Liverpool squad, but he just can't seem to do it in the Scotland team. I mean, it is pivotal that Steve Clarke gets the players playing together sooner rather than later, isn't it?
It is, but I mean, it's easy to say Scotland are better man for man, but the results against Israel suggest otherwise. It suggests there's very little between the teams. I mean, Scotland probably are in terms of pedigree. They do have better individuals, I would suggest, but in terms of the team unit, Scotland are not quite functioning at a level that suggests they're vastly superior to Israel. And I think you look at Scotland's results recently, apart from, since the Serbia game, they've been very poor, really. Apart from, I mean, the point was okay last week, but they've not won any of their last 3 games. They're even before that, I know they had that little form burst just before the Serbia game, but they've not been convincing for any real period of time. So I think if they are to get out of this group, they need to string a wee bit of consistency. I suppose it's a very strange group because it's sort of split by the Euros. They're going to have this little burst of games, and then they've got the Euros. So in some ways, I guess momentum's not a massive thing because they could draw the next couple of games, and then they have the Euros, and they have a great Euros, and that could spark something afterwards in the next phase of the campaign. So it's very sort of bitty and hard to. You could get a wee bit of momentum just now, and then suddenly you go to the Euros and lose all 3 games or whatever, and momentum counts for nothing. But I think that they definitely need to avoid defeat tonight, because you wouldn't want to come out the first 2 games with just 1 point. That would be leaving you behind the 8 ball in terms of probably Denmark and Austria and Israel all having the upper hand on you after 2 games, which is not an ideal scenario. So they definitely need to come away with at least a point, and ideally 3, I think, if they're serious about challenging at the top of this group.
The thing is, you're talking about momentum and stuff as well. Like if you put the Israelis on the other side of that, if Scotland are to get a result tonight, say they're to win this, that's them had 2 home games to start the group and 0 points. That could absolutely knock the stuffing out of them and sort of deem them not in that race for the second spot.
I wouldn't necessarily see Israel as contenders in this group. I mean, they'll see themselves as contenders, but I think it's probably Denmark, then Austria and Scotland, probably. Those three teams with Denmark as favourites to win the group, and Israel would probably need at least two of those teams to really be pretty underwhelming, underperforming to have a chance of getting into the top two.
Yeah, I mean, well, we're after some heroes tonight. We're hoping that John McGinn can repeat his performance from the other night. I mean, I believe he's the first Scottish player to score an international overhead kick. I might stand corrected. I heard that fact the other day. But he could join a small group of Scottish history makers with Stephen, couldn't he? Is it a 10-goal sort of history club he can join or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to a debate on the radio yesterday, and they were talking about how they were basically discussing the team going forward and whether it should be Lyndon Dykes or Che Adams that was going to be leading the line this evening. And they, almost to a man, I mean, these were all ex-Scotland internationals. They were all talking, and every single one of them said, "Oh, I mean, all Scotland need to do is just go and find a goal scorer." And the host pulled out a stat which absolutely was amazing, basically saying that in the last 4 decades there is only 8 players who have scored more than 10 goals for Scotland internationally. It's absolutely incredible that this not being able to find goals in a team is not something new to Scotland. I think this is a well-known, well-trodden path. So for John McGinn, who I think up until about maybe 12 months ago hadn't scored for his national team, to then become one of the top 9 goal scorers of all time within 18 months, 12 months, whatever it may be, it would be great. But as I've said to you before, every time I've ever seen John McGinn play in a more advanced role, even though he doesn't play that for Villa, play that for Scotland, he's always done a really good job. He puts himself around and he gets himself into good positions. But what I would be looking is tonight, especially, is to try and get Che Adams into this game as much as possible. I mean, he is not an out-and-out goal scorer. I mean, he's not a guy who's rattling in 20 goals a season at any point in his career. But I think he offers something completely different for Scotland. And if you've got clever players like McGinn, Fraser, sort of sitting off him and trying to find them in areas that can hurt the opposition, then I think it's definitely worth doing. Another thing is, I don't know if any of you guys remember either of the sort of previous games against Israel. Their right back was like Cafu. Like I guess Ali Dassa? Yep. He was unbelievable when they've played Scotland in previous games. So they need to try and nullify him a little bit as well.
It's funny you say that. There's the comment on the screen. The Israel fullback has had a lot of joy out of Robo. Would Kieran Tierney not be better shout to keep him on the back foot? Thanks to Kashmir for giving me that comment. I mean, that's exactly what you just said, isn't it, Stephen? Maybe that's their dangerous point in that fullback that we need to nullify straight away.
Well, this is the thing. I don't know whether he's just a guy that has decided he wants to play really well whenever he plays against Scotland, because I remember the last time we played them and I thought, who is he? Like, he must be a guy that's... And I think he was playing at like AZ Alkmaar or something, but he had only just signed for them. He had very little pedigree in European football whatsoever. But sometimes you find that. Like, the game the other night, Stephen O'Donnell, with his work rate alone, folk from other countries would have been watching that thinking, oh, who's that right back? And then they would have Googled him and seen that he plays for Motherwell. You know what I mean? These are the kind of guys that sometimes you find these heroes that kind of jump out, and not necessarily, when I say heroes, they're not going and getting hat-tricks or last-minute goals or whatever, but they put in performances for their national team that some people, like Alan Hutton was another example. He was nowhere near Villa team. He was like playing for the reserves, but he played for Scotland every single time because of his performance levels. So you're hoping that somebody in a dark blue or a white shirt or whatever they're going to wear tonight pops up with a performance like that. But you never know what's going to happen.
David Healy was probably a good example of that. A guy who was pretty ordinary at club level, and he was an absolute legend for Northern Ireland.
I mean, the coverage is now started on the TV. We'll be with you before the game, we'll be with you at half time, and we'll be with you at full time as well, right here on the Play On podcast. Anthony, I'm going to come at you with the next question. I mean, we've seen the first 5 minutes or so of the coverage there. I believe Israel are allowing 5,000 fans into the stadium tonight. I mean, they've really been on top of COVID. How big a boost is that for football in general and for the Israeli players on the park tonight?
Yeah, it's fantastic. I think everybody's just, as we've said numerous times, desperate for supporters to get back into stadiums, and I think everybody's now sort of lamenting the fact that even watching games on TV, there's something missing when there's no supporters in the stadium. And I think that'll add a little extra to the spectacle, I think, tonight, and certainly makes it a more appealing watch, the fact that there will be fans in the stadium, even if they are all supporting the opposition. And hopefully it galvanises the Scotland players, because they'll not be used to having had supporters in the stadium in the last year, really. So it'll be a bit of it's not like it's just 1,000 or 2,000 as well. I know they trialled maybe a few hundred supporters in Scottish grounds last autumn. 5,000 is a decent amount. They should be able to make a decent bit of noise, and it should hopefully give the players a little lift, because they've not been used to having people in the stadium. So certainly, yeah, it adds a wee bit extra spice and extra dimension to the evening.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we can get fans back into Hampden in time for the Euros. We touched on this the other night, Stephen, isn't it? It would just be Scottish luck that we qualify for our first major tournament. It's played 2 fixtures in our hometown, in our home stadium of Hampden Park, and then we're probably not even going to be allowed fans in there because of COVID. I mean, that's just Scotland's luck, isn't it, mate?
It's the most Scottish thing of all time. I mean, obviously it applies to other countries as well, but it just seems a bit more prevalent for Scotland because they've had such a long wait to get to a tournament. And as we kind of touched on with Sai the other night, that the Tartan Army element is such a big thing for Scotland and the Scottish national team, and the fans mean so much that without trying to sound like Celtic, that Scotland will be the most affected team at that tournament because of the lack of fans. And I think it would have given them a massive boost, because Hampden can be an absolute morgue at times. And when games like when they play Wednesday night fixtures and you're only getting 35,000 at Hampden and you've got the running track and everything, it can be terrible. But then you look at big games where it matters, the atmosphere can be electric and it can be rocking. And I think that's the sort of thing that you would have got in a major tournament if Scotland were playing basically at home. And on such a big stage, you could have guaranteed that the place would be electric and on fire. And that's kind of maybe what Scotland do need to go to a place like that. But Israel tonight, I think it will be a better experience for them to play with even just 5,000 fans, as Anthony said, that it's a much better atmosphere and sort of getting back to what they're used to.
They're not socially distanced either. They're all bumped in together. They could have had the stadium full.
You're actually spot on there, Anthony. I mean, if we watch the players singing the national anthem just now on the television coverage, I mean, you can see the crowd in the background. They certainly don't look socially distanced at all. And I believe Israel, though, they're one of the few countries that have actually got COVID fully in hand, along with like Australia, New Zealand that we all know about. But I think Israel were quite quick off the market, sort of shutting it down, really, I think.
The vaccine, they've been ahead of the game with that as well, so I think that's a big factor in why they've been able to get to this point.
Well, hopefully, there's one Scottish fan on the telly there. Well done, mate, well done. One of the Tartan Army made it over.
Incredible.
I mean, that's the thing, though. I mean, this is giving hope, though, Anthony, like we said. I mean, that is what could be on our doorstep, hopefully, once this all blows over and the vaccines are all done, and if we can get the country in the right direction and get to the stage where Israel is, then we can have fans back in the stadium.
Yeah, it's great. That's just lifted my spirits, just seeing that Scotland fan there in the stadium with his flag up. It's been a long time since we've seen that sort of thing, so brilliant.
Absolutely. How do you see this panning out tonight then, Stephen? What do you think the score will be? Who do you think the scorers are going to be?
Right, I got absolute dog's abuse for being negative against Scotland and I was proven ultimately wrong, which I was reasonably happy about. So tonight I'm actually going to be a bit more positive, but still not completely out of order. I'm going 1-1.
1-1. Who do you think Scottish scorer will be?
I think it will be John McGinn.
McGinn. There we go. Anthony, your thoughts?
I'm going 1-1 as well. I don't see much between these two teams. I think it will be a very tight game. Could be 0-0, could be 1-1. Could be 1-0 either team, but I'm going to go for 1-1. Shea Adams.
1-1. I'm making a note of this. 1-1. Adams. I'm going to say 2-1 Scotland, just because that's my gut feeling. I'm going to say Ryan Fraser and Shea Adams. All right, you've got that there. Get your predictions in the comments. We've still got another 5 minutes to go before kick-off.
I've got a really important question that I need to ask before the game kicks off, Simmy. Why are you not wearing your skin tight Scotland strip and your Hey Jimmy hat?
Right, so in case you've never seen the show, when Scotland did qualify for the Euros, I had St Andrew's flag, I had the See You Jimmy hat and the t-shirt on, but it was a bit tight that night, Stephen, so it got returned to the shop, unfortunately.
For a profit, I believe, as well. For a profit.
Well, we're not going to go down that route in case certain sports shops are watching. Wasn't my mistake. 3-1 Scotland, Elliot says in the comments. 2-1 Sean says. Keep them coming. 5-1 David.
5-1.
That's a bit bold, but I mean, hey, we'll take it, definitely. Israel half-time, Scotland full-time, Sean thinks. Could be a not bad bet.
Shout, actually. Not bad shout.
We could see the odds on that. We'll get onto the bookmakers very shortly. I could see us nicking it late, Daniel says. 3-1, Anthony reckons on the comments. Big Shea Adams with a brace.
Has any single person said either a draw or a loss? No, nobody.
No, really not. Alan says...
That just
Blind
sums up the
faith.
Scottish people. It sums up the Scottish people. Just like, I will do it. It'll be fine.
Scott says 2-1 is 9-1. No, sorry, that's a gentleman goes by the name Mountain Man. 2-1 Scotland is 9-1. 0-0. Someone's come up with now. There we go. Just go through all the comments. Do keep them coming. Like I say, we'll be with you at half-time as well and full-time. I think we are just approaching kick-off. They're doing the toss for... Has Andy Robertson won it? No, it's went Israel's way.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting first couple of minutes to see how they set up as well. But no, I've got a good feeling. I think they're going to do all right.
The team lineup's up at the moment. I don't know if they'll show the formation. That's one thing that we've been kind of debating, isn't it? How are they going to line up? Are they going to go that 3-4-3? Are they going to go the 4-3-3? Are they going to have different formations for different attacks? I mean, there we go.
Oh, they've got Tierney in midfield as well.
Yep. 4-3-3, the television's got it lined up with Robertson at the back, Hendry, Hanley and O'Donnell. Midfield, the Tierney, McGregor and McTominay, and up front, McGinn, Shea, Adams and Ryan Fraser.
The Israeli right back of his work cut out. Fraser, Tierney and Robertson all coming down that side.
That's it. And you've got to remember ex-Celtic player Kyle as well is on the bench for Israel tonight. He could come on and cause a bit of bother. I think he did that in a couple of the fixtures. Still a very good player. What club's he playing at now? Kyle, anybody know?
He was at Brighton recently, wasn't he?
He left. He's playing. I think he's playing back in Israel now. He left in the summer.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it should be a good game. 2-1 Scotland. I'm going to go for that, definitely. Here we go. Why so many Villa players? I'm looking at all the comments. There's loads coming through. Hopefully we're all right and we do get a Scotland victory. It's just about to kick off. I'm going to leave things here. We're going to get away, get a quick cup of tea and watch the Scotland game. We'll be with you in 45 minutes time for the half-time analysis. Hopefully it's a 1-0, 2-0, 3-0 Scotland lead at that point. But enjoy the game. Myself, Anthony, Stephen Commons, I'll be with you in 45 minutes. We'll see you then.